Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week I wanted to talk about recycling your ideas, and amusingly, I believe this was a creative exploration topic. But I think that the idea of kind of going back to this and talking about it again is exactly why I feel like it's worth talking about again. There's a lot of ways to recycle ideas, whether it comes to content or to how you approach and solve a problem, or even if it's just something where you saw something somewhere else and you want to try it, just kind of experimentation and exploration of an idea. And I can go into all of those if I remember the three that I said. I think that initially, like, it's good to revisit ideas. I think that it's important to go back to that for the same reason why I'm redoing this episode, kind of, because the community that follows you might have missed it in the past, and it's important to reiterate something if you feel that it's worth talking about. So when it comes to this, like, I don't know how many people here watch the Creative Exploration series. And I think that there's a lot of valuable information there, but I don't expect them to go back and watch, 4 or 5 hours of a talking head video of me. And I think that that's perfectly fine. I think that this content is, for all intents and purposes, evergreen. Like, it's always going to be relevant in some regard. And when I make a book, which I do intend on doing, I will probably bring this idea in there too, and I'll talk about it again. And this gives me an opportunity to continue to refine the idea of recycling. But it also gives people a new opportunity to experience it. Because, again, some people might be following me, but not at the tier in which they get this podcast material. Secondly, it can come down to reusing the same tools to solve the same problem. And I think that this is completely fine as well. I know that melodica is something that I use quite a bit in my music. And it's not that I always feel bad when I use it, but there are definitely times where I'm like, oh man, I'm going back to the melodica well. I have to just kind of do this again because this is the easy solution. It's the easy out. And I think that, that's sometimes the case. I do agree that it's sometimes the case, but I also do think that for the most part, I do that because it's an instrument that I love to play and it fits my skill set, and it just works for the type of music that I do. And I think that that's really, really wonderful. And I think that that's really why I do it. And I don't feel shame when I do that. Like, I think that it's really important that I embrace my strengths and I don't just try new things all the time, because that would get exhausting and that would probably not end well. And yeah, I think that when you're exploring ideas, it's totally fine to recycle ideas or even bring in bits and pieces of old ideas and try new things with it. Like, there's been plenty of times where I take the idea of pulling random samples from, Splice or my community and making a song out of that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but often I tend to learn something new every time I do it. And that kind of brings me into the third bullet point that I had for this, and that's just for exploration and for growing as an artist. I think that there's a lot to be said about taking a simple idea and then twisting it in a different way and allowing yourself to kind of run with it and try to get new experiences and new knowledge out of it, because you're familiar with that. You're familiar with that core idea, and you don't have to expend the mental energy to get momentum on it. You kind of hit the ground running in that case. And I really like the idea of momentum for that, because it really is hard to start sometimes, especially if you're trying something new. I mentioned this in the How to Use FamiTracker series, but I learned FamiTracker by taking songs that already existed and converting them into FamiTracker. And this was a really great way for me to learn, because I didn't have the mental load of trying to understand how to make FamiTracker work while also trying to be creative and making a completely new song from scratch. I think that having that already taken care of for me was a huge benefit for me. because it allowed me to just kind of focus on the things that mattered, and I didn't have to worry about making a custom song or a new song. I just had to worry about transcribing what already existed into the software so I could learn how the software functioned mechanically. And then once I understood how that worked, then it was much easier for me to go and make custom music that way. So yeah, I think that recycling ideas is great. And sometimes people give it a bad rap, but I think that they just don't understand what they're talking about sometimes. And yes, if you like, not to put any band on blast, but like if you're like the Chainsmokers and you just release the same song over and over, that's kind of the meme. Like Coldplay and Chainsmokers, they just release the same song. Like there's a limit to recycling ideas, but I also think that for the purposes that I talked about, it's really beneficial to do that. So yeah, that's everything I had. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and thank you so much for being a Patreon subscriber. I really do genuinely appreciate it. We are at episode 50. We've got 2 more to go before we've hit a full year. So yeah, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later. Be remarkable.